Joining us now is the voice of the Boise State Broncos, Bob BEHLER, via the Deseret First Credit Union hotline. Bob, welcome back to BYU Sports Nation.
Great. I guess we're going to do this quite a few years in a row.
Yeah, it seems like we're playing every year until 2094 or something like that.
2023, technically. But, yeah. Bob, this is my favorite series that BYU's hooked up. I don't know how Boise State fans feel about it, but it's great to play Boise State every year and get the other team on the home field. What's it like in your opinion, playing BYU every year?
Yeah, I think it's great because, it's a road game. A lot of teams in the West, are so spread out geographically. It's a road trip that – people from Boise can make down to Provo and vice versa. There's a lot of BYU fans, in Idaho. So I think it is a great series. And maybe the best thing is both teams are usually good. So you end up with good games. The last two games in the series haven't been that good. The better team has been at home and has dominated. But I have a feeling that tomorrow's game is going to look more like that 7-6 game we saw in 3 seasons ago.
Yeah, the low-scoring thing is something that we talked about on the show, and I talked about it with you when I did my radio hit yesterday, Bob. These two young quarterbacks matching up against each other. Can you even give an advantage to either one of those young quarterbacks making either a first road start or a first home start?
No, I don't think so. I think both guys are going to need help around them. I think that both lines are going to have to help them. I think both running games are going to have to help them, and I think both receivers are going to have to help them. I think if anybody thinks that either Finley or Mangum is going to go out and win the game on their own, I mean, there aren't that many quarterbacks that can do that, even in the pros that can do that. So, I think it's going to have to be a group effort, but I look at both sides defensively and think, I know for Boise State, as a matter of fact, defense is the better side of the football, and I think BYU's defense is just as stout. I know you guys are running out some numbers last year, how close the two teams were defensively. I think both offenses are going to have some trouble.
I just noticed on a graphic we have up for you that you're 62-5. Boise State's 62-5 when you call the games. You've only called 5 losses since 2008?
Yeah, that's true. Of course, my first 4 years coincided with Kellen Moore, so
that was
pretty. No, I've lost more than 5 because they were 8-5 in 2013.
Okay, I was going to say, wow, that's quite the record. But Boise State,
I think it's less than 10.
Less than 10. Wow, that's amazing. Okay, the matchup's interesting because here you have this kid, this 22-year-old kid from Eagle, Idaho, who was a Boise State fan. There are pictures of him wearing Boise State gear, whatever. Now he's playing Boise State as the BYU quarterback, unfortunately, because Taysom Hill is injured and out for the year. What's it like in Boise right now, having the kid from Boise play against Boise this weekend?
People are excited about that. They remember him as a star at Eagle High School. We had on our radio show yesterday his coach, talking about, the things that, make Tanner special and make Tanner a guy he thought would, do very well in college football. I just think, for Boise State's first 2 games, you had the first game with the former coach, Chris Peterson, returning to Boise as the top storyline. And now in the second game, you've got this matchup of 2 teams that are 1-0, 2 teams that I think that they can be pretty good. Whoever wins is probably going to be in the top 25 next week. Boise State is there now. A BYU win, and they'll probably switch places. A Boise State win, and they probably scoot a little higher up into the top 20. And now you throw in the fact that you've got a freshman quarterback coming in for the injured superstar. And, oh, by the way, the freshman quarterback is from the hometown. So, yeah, I just think it certainly adds interest and fuel, and I'm sure ESPN2 will be thrilled with that storyline.
It's not hard to find storylines given everything that happened for Boise State and for BYU just a week ago, but they have now turned the page. They match up tomorrow night on ESPN2. We're talking with Bob BEHLER, the voice of the Boise State Broncos on BYU Sports Nation. This is going to be a tough question to answer, but I really want your opinion, so I'm going to ask it anyway. Which team has more on the line tomorrow night?
Well, I know more what Boise State has, so I'm going to say Boise State. I think if Boise State wants to get to one of those New Year's Six bowl games, I think they're going to have to win this game against BYU because I think it's going to be their best win of the season by far. And, when you get to that spot for New Year's Six, you're competing with the other, assuming you can win your conference, which easier said than done, especially on September 11th. I think that Boise State has more to gain from it. BYU, I think, in order to get in a New Year's Bowl, they have to be in the top 4, if I'm not mistaken, or be invited as an at-large. But I think maybe Boise State has a little more on the line than BYU would be what I would say.
And last year was a 2-loss year, but a New Year's Six year with the G5, highest G5 ranking invite to the Fiesta Bowl. Fantastic win over Arizona. Grant Hedrick, Jay Ajayi, huge pieces of that team. How have Ryan Finley and Jeremy McNichols and those guys how did the offense look against Washington?
First half or second half?
Yes.
We'll start with the first half.
They looked really good. First half they had over 250 yards and 16 points. In the second half they had 83 yards and no points. So. And again, it goes back to a lot of other things. You talk about the line, you talk about the receivers. I mean, in the second half, they should have hit a bomb for a touchdown, went right off the fingertips of Chaz Anderson. Maybe Finley could have thrown it a little shorter. Maybe Anderson could have held on. I mean, it was so close that all of a sudden you're talking about a different game. But that's football. You make a key play here and there. And obviously BYU knows that last week, making the key play as the clock said 0-0-0. But I think the three running backs filling in for Jay did in the first game a nice job. You got 89 yards out of McNichols, you got 48 out of Young, and you got 20 out of Demas. So, that added up pretty good. I think Finley filling in for a senior quarterback, he didn't do as well. I mean, I'll remember, maybe the BYU fans will too, Grant Hedrick's first start, very similar to Tanner Mangum's. Hedrick started that 37-20 loss down there 2 seasons ago. He came in relief and played well against Nevada the week before, and then did not do very well down in Provo. So we'll see if that holds to maybe what will happen to Mangum. Maybe not. Mangum maybe will light it up in his first start. That remains to be seen tomorrow night. But I think that Boise State, for the offense to be where they need to be, needs Finley to progress. The old football adage, you improve the most from week 1 to week 2, and I'm sure that Boise State would love to see that happen.
We've talked a ton about the Boise State defense, and collectively how talented and experienced they are. Who are some of the playmakers on the defensive side of the ball that BYU fans should be aware of and that we'll notice tomorrow night?
Well, Jeremy, you mentioned Darian Thompson at free safety. He's basically in his 4th year starting. He started the second half of his redshirt freshman year. Had an interception last week. He now is, creeping up to the record for Mountain West interceptions, which is 18. He has 15. He quarterbacks the defense at the free safety. You mentioned Dante Dion on the corner. Not a very big guy, 5'9", 155, but really a very good cover corner. The linebackers, Vallejo and Weaver, very active, make a lot of tackles. And the defensive line, Kamale Correa is the guy that's the playmaker on the outside. And he's a guy that you'll have to block. He sometimes will stand up and look more like a linebacker, and sometimes he'll put his hand on the dirt and come in and pass rush that way. So they've got a lot of people. They've got a lot of depth. I don't know if they have the star power of the team in 2011 when they sent 4 defensive linemen to the pros, but this team is extremely deep, extremely talented. I don't know if it's the best defense Boise State's ever had, but I think it's going to be in the discussion.
What are some other matchups that you're looking forward to seeing Saturday night?
Well, I'm looking forward to seeing the receivers for BYU against the Broncos secondary. I think that Boise State did a good job against them last year, did not do a good job against them 2 years ago. And then I think in every football game, the matchup that goes under the radar every time is offensive line versus defensive line. I look at the lines, and I think BYU's lines are far superior to what Washington put out last week. And I think that will be a factor. Boise State with a very experienced offensive line in addition to a very experienced defensive line. So I think if people have binoculars at the stadium, sometimes you're looking at the quarterbacks, you're looking at the running backs. But I think the winner of the game is going to be the team that can control the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball.
Bob Behler, the voice of the Boise State Broncos. Follow him on Twitter at BSU. Bob, will end with a yes/no question. Bob, is this a rivalry game?
I think it will be. I think it's starting to get there. I mean, only 6 games have been played. I think you need some barn burners to really stoke it as a rivalry. I think you need a finish like, the 7-6 game, where BYU goes for 2 and doesn't get it, or the Hail Mary game like you guys had last week. The last 2 games really weren't that fun to watch. Boise State dominated last year. BYU dominated. So in a long answer, I don't think it's yes or no, but I think it's heading to yes.
Okay, very good. Bob, great to talk to you again. We'll see you tomorrow night. Have a good call.
Thank you, guys.